Um, Welcome. And so this is not a ceremony that we're going into today, but just because the nature of what I'm going to be talking about of transition, grief, sacred, soul work, ceremony, all these rich, juicy things that are in our beautiful soul and body, brought to us in many ways, but also brought to us by our beautiful, dear animal friends. I'm gonna light the candle. It just feels really important that we do so because it is also an honouring and a connecting and thanking. Yeah. And just through the flame of the candle in his light. Just reminding ourselves of the light and connection that continues infinitely with our animal friends, past, present, and future, not just in this life, but all lives that we journey on with them. Ah. So, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And I am so into this space now of wanting to share talk from our animal friends of what they want us to understand and to know and to be with from these like scary words of transition, of grief, of death, if that's the word that we want to give it. And I choose consciously to not really use the word death because of it being a very charged word where we have our own belief system attached to it, and also in our society that death is like, oh, it's cut off, it's the end. And what I want to share tonight is that it's not an end, it's a continuation of existence. And also I consciously choose to not really use the word death because death as consciousness itself, as a form of consciousness, has its own way of understanding itself, has its own way of how it sees itself when it comes to visit us. And that is actually as a friend, of an ally. And the way that it shares itself to me is many of us in our society even relate, like, it's almost like we're not deserving of its name because we're not understanding of who it really is. So for me, it's transition and also grief, which are both sacred. And in that way, this is how I've come to know our animal friends just in the work that I do with animals, is that everything is an expression of source consciousness. So all of us here on this talk now, we are an expression of source consciousness. The trees outside, an expression of source consciousness. The soil, an expression of source consciousness. Mushrooms, an expression of source consciousness. Um, our animal friends, an expression of source consciousness. The thing that is different is, as expressions of source consciousness, we are the only life form that has been separated from continuing our existence with infinite consciousness. So, how I phrase that is that we are the only life form that has been separated from sacred. And because we're separate from sacred, there is something about us that we are searching, seeking, wanting that we never quite meet and never quite gets fulfilled. And that is our connection back to sacred through soul, our connection back to sacred through our soul work. And so I am wearing what's called a medicine pouch, a little medicine bundle. And in my medicine pouch is full of magical things that are important to me, that mean something to me, that I wear close to my heart so that I feel connected to them from my heart. And this is how I see our animal friends, that as humans that have a thinking mind that likes to label, we are the ones that have created labels, that have created names for our animals. Manitou and Lilu that are just out there, I have given them a name, and Manitou and Lilu beyond their name are, well, they're dogs, they're canines. That is something for me to understand in my cognition and in my thinking mind, that when I see them, or what I'm seeing are dogs. But our animal friends are expressions of source consciousness, whether it's a dog, it's a cat, it's a horse, it's a lizard, it's a snake, it's a gerbil. They're all expressions of source consciousness, cleverly disguised in the form that they are, but as a medicine bundle, as a medicine bundle for us. And so it's not to discount anything that they are, and how we should also be supporting them through reciprocity and through respect and value of who they are as a living sacred being. But they are a living sacred being that hasn't been separated from sacred ground. So they are still living from this space of consciousness. They are still with the fairies, dreaming with the stars, singing with the trees, speaking to the earth. They don't see a difference between the seen and the unseen realms, the physical and the non-physical realms that we are also part of. And this is what they are bringing us back to by being in our life to activate our soul work. And they do this very much so when they're in their living form, when they're in their living body. They are constantly, they're like the lighthouse or a beacon. They're constantly beaming to us an update about where we are at in our soul work. And our soul work is that return to sacred. That soul work is not being in the thinking mind, but being in the sacred mind of the body and feeling, being in conversation with the body, also being in conversation and feeling from the soul, from our heart. And what happens in these circumstances, or what can happen in these circumstances, is our animal friends are completely fine. I mean, yes, they may have trauma, they may be in pain, they may be in suffering. I'm not discounting that. But in their entirety, they are absolutely fine. The ones who aren't are us. And that is what they recognize, and that is what they're sharing to us. They're like, guys, we're actually fine. The ones who are hurting are you. And this is what we want to bring to share to you in the form that they come as our animal friends. They're bringing us into our soul work. And so how this can be seen in living form with our animal friends when they're in physical form is the unconscious ways that we are placing them in oppressive systems, that we are controlling them, that we are projecting our own pains inadvertently onto them, the conversations that were said to us about being a good little girl or a good little boy, or you can't do that, or you're now being too annoying, or, you know, you're doing something that I don't want you to do, or you're not the dog that I expected. All these things that actually are things for us that we carry, that our animal friends and expressions of consciousness are pulling out of us, of going, it's okay, we're here to do this, we know this is what's going to be happening, we're pulling and pulling in a way for us to eventually see the invitation for us to do our own soul work. So they are always doing that when they're in physical form. But what can come forward really powerfully so is when their transition comes. Because what happens is a much bigger blow when they transition. Or often that's what happens. Because the bigger blow is our heart becomes broken. Our heart completely shatters, right? We feel it as like broken glass. Our heart shatters. And that heart break is actually an invitation to say, keep your heart awake. So things happen to us in early life, and also, not that I'm really going into this tonight, but also things happen in our past lives that we carry in this body. Things happen in our ancestry that we carry in this body through the generations. But things happen in this life that we carry as pains, that we carry as wounds, that we carry as charges, that we carry as earthquakes and aftershocks. We carry traumas that our animal friends know it hardens the heart. It creates a sadness in our heart, it creates a sorrow in our heart, it creates a statement of, I don't feel safe enough to allow my heart to be open, so I keep it closed. And so this is an opportunity when they transition to go, the heart is broken. We have the heartbreak as an invitation through our animal friends to go, keep your heart awake, keep your heart here. And when we keep our heart awake and our heart open, it allows us to be pulled into this space of infinite consciousness. It allows us to be pulled into this space of sacred ground with not just our animal friends, but all of life, but also then this knowing of who our animal friends truly are. And so right now we have two beautiful dogs, Manitou and Lilu. They're not dogs at all. That's what we've named them, and that's the physical form that they're in. But they're so much more than that. And there's this beautiful statement that I was taught ages ago, or told ages ago, and it always makes me want to cry because it speaks to me, right? It speaks to me here. And that statement, and we can apply it to any life form. But the statement that was shared with me is, the moment we tell a child a blackbird is a blackbird, they'll never see a blackbird again. Oh, I always makes me want to cry. I'm going to say that again. The moment we tell a child a blackbird is a blackbird, they will never see a blackbird again. Because what's happened is that by labeling, by teaching that word, oh, well, that's a blackbird, we're now defining it. A blackbird looks like this. It has a yellow beak. It's this size. It's this colour. This is what it can do, and that's all that it can do. But it's an expression of source consciousness, so it also holds wisdom and intelligence, messages to the world and to us as a life form that is an expression of consciousness. So even with Manitou and Lilu, I'm not seeing them as dogs, I'm seeing them beyond that of who are you? What do you carry? What do you hold as wisdom, as consciousness that you were here to bring to the world? Because it's not just about me, they're doing things on this earth that I don't even know about yet, but also what they're bringing for me for my own soul work that they show whilst they are in living form. And also when their transition comes, which I've experienced many a times through my other animal friends that have transitioned, what are they bringing for me through their transition? And so there is a split as well in that we in our society are grief illiterate and death illiterate. We don't want to talk about it. We don't know how to talk about it. We have been fed this belief system that it's scary, that it's fearful, that it's cold. Like it doesn't even have like, oh, even to touch it, it's like touching cold metal. We don't know how to be with it. But our animal friends know exactly how to speak of grief and how to speak of transition, because the landscapes that these experiences exist in is in the land of sacred and is in the land of soul. So I always say we can't bypass grief, we're not supposed to, but we cannot think our way out of grief, which is what we try to do. Because sacred doesn't speak or care about the thinking mind and what the thinking mind knows or thinks or likes or believes. But the thinking mind cannot access the spaces of sacred. And so the two don't speak to each other. They don't understand the language or the landscape of each other. But the soul does. And so when our animal friends transition, they're inviting us to access this landscape of sacred, of soul, are returning to self. And so when I contemplate grief, this is what I love as a medicine of their transition, which is sacred. It's a sacred medicine, and I'll talk more about their transition in a moment. But as a sacred medicine for our grief, this is one of the things that I love, because the thinking mind, like we are supposed to grieve, but the thinking mind will then give it a story. I am grieving because my animal friend transitioned. I am still grieving because my animal friend transitioned. And I say I'm still grieving. What I really want to say is a caveat here is there is no right or wrong way to grieve. How grief is for me is how grief is for me. How grief is for you is how grief is for you. There is no comparison. There is no right, or there's no manual, there's no guidebook of like, this is how you're supposed to grieve, point 101. There's none of that. Because it's a felt experience, and it's a felt experience that's very, very unique, because we have our own individual signature to grief based on our upbringing around it, based on our teachings around it, based on our life experiences, based on how many griefs have we been exposed to. And this is the whole point of what their grief introduces us to, or what grief from our animal friends transition introduces us to, which for me is just all the griefs. It's just all the griefs. Like this grief, yes, just all the griefs. Yeah, but like, yeah, all of them, just all the griefs. And for some, that might be like, oh, well, that's only two. Beautiful. Maybe that's like 1,000. Also beautiful, but many to carry. And so this is why in our grief work, again in our society, we're like, oh, can you do it for me? Can it be really quick? Can it like be really easy? This is patient, slow, soft work. That we are, when grief comes, when a transition comes, it's an initiation. We're being called to something really important. We're being called to a ceremony. Because what the grief and what the transition requires is the ceremony. And one thing that we are as human beings is that we are even beyond human beings, is that by our very nature, we are ceremonial beings. We know how to do ceremony because it's etched, it's inscribed into our blood. We know how to do ceremony without there being a manual or a handbook or someone telling us to do it. And it allows us to drop into this space of the unseen, the non ordinary, by going into ceremony that allows us to understand our animal friends' transition in a different way, that allows us to meet their transition and our grief in a way that is medicine for us. And so I go back to when our animal friend transitions, we are supposed to be in our grief journey. And in that space, holding through curiosity what it is awakening for us through this heart awake, having the heart opened, and also being in the pain. You know, so many people will come to me like, it's too painful. I really appreciate that. It's supposed to be painful, but actually, before our animal friend transitioned, the pain was always there because we're already most of, I mean, I actually don't even know and couldn't even assume a human in our society in these times that isn't even carrying one pain, that isn't even carrying one grief. So most of us are carrying at least one grief, if not many, 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 many. And our animal friends through their transition are going, yes, be with my grief, but can you also be with all the griefs? This is the soul work. So there is a lovely man called Michael Meade, and Michael Meade talks about the three layers of the human experience. So layer number one is the social layer, the pleasantries. Oh, hi, so nice to see you. How you doing? How are the kids? Are you going to go to that event next week? Great, I'll be there. Yeah, I think I'm bringing the dessert. Someone else is bringing the starters. The pleasantries, the nice social stuff. Layer three is contact with sacred, contact with soul, accessing these parts where we realize I am more than human. My animal friend is more than animal. I am connected to the unseen, more than human sacred ground of the cosmological landscape. But to get from layer one to layer three, we've got to go through the initiations of layer two. And layer two is the pain, the judgments, the shame, the blame, the guilt, the griefs, the traumas, as a way, as a pathway to get us into this landscape of sacred. And what I find, and what I deeply feel, which I have no idea if it's true or not, but what I deeply feel is that for most of us in our society and in these times, the very, very first sorrow, the very, very first grief that we experienced was that of soul sorrow. It was a grief of the soul, when the soul was separated from sacred, and when we were truly separated from our soul. Because when we're babies, when we're babes, when we're young children, we're not existing from the thinking mind. We're very much in the realm with the animals, with the other animals. We're seeing the fairies, we're with the dragons, we're riding on the unicorns, we're seeing our ancestors. Like, to us, that is real because it's supposed to be real. But then bit by bit by bit, we kind of get chastised or told or blamed or judged or punished. And so we learn, and then we forget about the other realm that we exist with as beings of source consciousness. So we get separated from soul, our soul gets separated from sacred. And this is how I started today, of the thing that we are seeking, we're wanting, we're searching. It's just not quite yet. I just still feel empty, disconnected, lost. I don't feel whole and complete. That connection back to sacred and soul. That the route that we go down to reach these spaces is through the grief. That, as an example, our animal friend is beautifully knowing and offering to us in their transition. Of yes, we are to be with their grief or our grief from their transition, but it goes beyond that, of the pain that we feel is because the pain was always there from all the other times that we've had a grief. And as I'm sharing that, the thinking mind might be like, oh, well, yeah, because I lost my nan, and oh, there was this, yeah. Grief is not connected to a transition of a living form that we loved. That is one form of grief. But there are many, 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 many pathways to grief. One of the biggest ones, which creates the grief in the first place, is something happened that we didn't expect. A change happened that we didn't want, that was sudden, that wasn't expected. So that change can be, I'm 5 years old, and I have poured my absolute heart into this drawing of my family's cat. I poured my heart and soul This is my artistic interpretation of how the cat looks as 5 years old. And maybe there's a family party and the adults are downstairs, and I run downstairs because I'm supposed to be in my bedroom or in bed, and I run downstairs and I'm like, everybody, all the adults, look, I'm pouring my absolute heart and soul to you by showing you my proud picture of my cat that I drew. And the adults look at it for a moment and go, sorry, it's a picture of what? Of the cat, of like Rufus the cat, like the cat. Rufus is black. That's yellow. You've coloured it in yellow. I know, but it's a Rufus. It doesn't even look like Rufus. That's a grief. Right there. A grief. And we may not even be able to contemplate that as a grief or feel it as a grief. Well, we feel it as a grief very, very much, or see it as a grief or hold it as a grief. And it doesn't matter. We're not necessarily need to know what all these griefs are. But when we often think of grief, we are taken to who in my life that I loved, that I adored, is now no longer with me. So it could be loved human ones, loved animal ones, can be loved trees that have been chopped down, etc., etc. But a grief is a grief is a grief. Something happened that I didn't expect, or there was a change that I didn't want that happened suddenly. So we carry all these griefs that become pains that through our animal friends transition into our soul work, that's what they're leading us into. Because to them, they're living from this beautiful space as we are when we're beyond the thinking mind. Our animal friends live from what's called the soul span, which is infinite. So me as Isla has an expiration date. I'm like yogurt, open yogurt. I'm going to go off at some point and come out my body. I have a sell-by date. So I'm finite. This body, this being that's been given the name Isla in human form. My soul is infinite, which means even in my lifespan as Isla, if I live until I'm 50 or I'm 100, to my soul span it's like 3 blinks. It's nothing, because the soul span is infinite. So our animal friends share that they don't need to be in a body to be alive. They do not need to be in a body to be alive. It's a continuation of how they fall into our life for the wisdom that they can bring for our soul work, how they then exit our life in physical form for what we need for our soul work. And that is also when we're ready for something. When there is a knowing, so I completely trust, I call it the oversoul. There's a higher force, not in a manipulative way of just an oversoul that goes, no, not ready. Okay, ready now. Even though we may not think we're ready for it, our oversoul goes, yeah, this is when it's going to happen. And in that sense, as a human, we may tell ourselves, damn it, like, why now? Like, why not 30 years ago? Like, what? Oh, why now? Because we're ready for it now. And so there's a sense of we may contemplate an animal friend that transitions, 20 years old. I woke up in the morning, they transition in their sleep, like I'm sad. But that's so beautiful. They transitioned in their sleep. They transitioned naturally. They're 20 years old. They had a great life. We know our animal friends are not going to live as long as we do. Unless, we're 90 years old and we get a puppy. Then, okay, we might go first. But in that space, that blow of grief is there. It's sad. It's supposed to be sad. We're supposed to grieve. But also it's like, it's okay. Like that's kind of comfortable. But when an animal friend transitions at 5 years old, maybe we've done everything holistic. Like I fed the right food. I didn't over vaccinate. I didn't use chemicals, exercise, all this stuff. Again, something happens that we didn't expect. It happens because of what the soul is ready for and to be activated. So when things are comfortable, they're comfortable. So it's softer. It's really soft. But when things happen that are sharp, that are painful, that are challenging and not expected, there is also an element that, yes, because this is the only way that the heart is going to be blown open so that the heart can stay awake to explore this ground of soul work that is only going to be brought forward through the extremity of how our animal friend transitioned. Because our animal friends do not care what age they are. They do not live from age. They live in sacred time. They live in soul time, which is infinite. Now we do when we're in the landscape of sacred. And this is what I love about ceremony. When I take people into ceremony, they're like, I literally forgot where I was, in what landscape. I went to a different landscape. I forgot about all space and time. That is beautiful because it tells me that someone actually is in ceremony. When we're in these ceremonial spaces, we forget about all space and time. When we're with our soul, we are also in that space of soul time, which is infinite. So our animal friends are not lying there, sitting there going, oh, good grief, I'm only 5. Like, I should be, I should be at least 17. Oh, that's for us. That again is our thinking mind telling us what we expect and what we needed. And within that, there is information there. There is useful information about if it bothers us, what happened to us in the first place for it to bother us. Our animal friends aren't sitting there going, I'm 5, I wish I was 14, I should be 17. They're like, oh, I'm in a body again, and like this body is, wow, like this is amazing to be, whoa, what? Oh my god, my nose, oh, I can smell so far away than what I used to be able to in the last body I was in. Oh, they're living in that experience without that contemplation of, is it going to be for 5 hours? Is it going to be for 5 years? Is it going to be for 50 years? Because they're still in that space of living as consciousness, so they're living as soul span, which is infinite. There's a beautiful phrase by a channeler from Ramdas who shares, and I really hear our animal friends share this as well. He shares, death is perfectly safe. It's like taking off a tight shoe. That's how this being described it, of like, death is like, imagine like a really tight shoe, and how when we're wearing our tight bras, right, and we're getting like, oh, thank God I can take my bra off. Oh, I mean, nobody loves anything better than taking off our bras, right, when we're back in the house. So it's like, oh, imagine, there we are at. There we are at. And so in this space of ceremony, this is what our animal friends ask. That they don't care how long they live for, because there is a different gnosis, a different knowledge. So I always say the thinking mind is intellect and knowledge. The sacred mind is intelligence and wisdom. Now, our animal friends as consciousness are living on this ground and in this ground of intelligence and wisdom. So they have a knowing of, I'm coming in this way for what is to be revealed, when it's to be revealed, how it's to be revealed, and then as I leave, this is a really important message. It's really important medicine. Now, what is really beautiful is what the animal friends share with me, that when I kind of first received this and it landed, I was like, whoa, like this is amazing. Like it just fell so deep in my body that when our animal friends are with us, they are with us as ancestors and spirit guides in a physical form. When they transition, they are ancestors and spirit guides that we can call upon. They are literally here still walking with us. They're in the spirit realm, they're in the unseen realm, but they are ancestors and spirit guides because they haven't just been that dog or that cat or that horse. They've been many things, as have we, with them. Now, that doesn't mean to say we've always been the human and they've been the animal. It might be that we've been a different animal and they've been the human. It might be that we've been a whole herd of giraffes together. It might be that we've been humans together. It's a cyclical continuation of coming in and going out for how we're to support each other, for what is needed for the iterations of the soul work that is needed to be done. So, when our animal friends transition, as I say, they are not in that space of, I don't care whether I'm 5 or 50. I don't live from age. They live from soul span. But what they do ask is to be honoured. And for me, this is the really important part, because they are sacred beings, as are we. Everything that has been created is sacred. And so they ask, as sacred, will you honour me? How you honour me is through a ceremony. My transition is sacred. I am moving from one form to another. I am to be honoured as a sacred being that is going to a higher place, going to a holy place, going back to divine. So create a ceremony for me. Now, like I've shared, we are ceremonial beings by nature. We've been doing ceremony for thousands of years. So it's in us. We know how to do ceremony. We might need guidelines, we might need steps, we might be like, oh, is this right? Is this wrong? There are guidelines and steps of ceremony so that it is safe. Because when we're in ceremony, we are in non-ordinary states. So we don't exist in time and space. In that sense, our space can be vulnerable. So there are particular ways to hold it. There are particular ways to set it up. There are particular ways to do it. But when we are doing it, when we're in ceremony, often the things that come through come through when we're in the ceremony of like, oh, I might start, I'm just going to light a candle, and I'm just going to call on my animal friend, I'm going to speak to them, I might move a little bit. Oh, okay, this thing, oh, this song's coming, okay, I'm going to sing this song's coming through. Wow, who the heck's this? Okay, there's an ancestor with, actually it's a dragon. Okay, things will start to come into the unseen, from the unseen into the seen when we're in ceremony. And the ceremony itself has a reparative function. There is a saying of, if we leave the ceremony this feeling the same way that we did as we entered it, then nothing was done. And that's why we create ceremonial spaces. We could. It's very unlikely that we're going to do ceremony in a supermarket. We could, but it's very unlikely. We create these sacred spaces. Now, not necessarily sacred sites. We don't have to all travel to Stonehenge or to a pyramid or to a Mayan god in Peru somewhere. We can do it in our home. When I'm doing ceremony for my animal friends, I'm doing it in a room that I'm making sacred and that I'm starting to go into ceremony with and for both my animal friend to honor them and also myself. And when we are in this space of ceremony with our animal friend, when they are soon to transition, or even when they have transitioned, we can connect to their consciousness to go, hey, I see you, I value you, I recognize you as sacred, and I want to honor you. I'm understanding your message, I'm understanding this is what you're asking for, the only thing you're asking for in your transition. So, what would you like? What would you like by way of altar? What would you like on your altar? How would you like your body being prepared, if best as we can, if that is through euthanasia and that happens at the home? Then how do you want your body wrapped? Do you want your body cleansed? Do you want your body adorned? Do you want a particular song sung? Do you want particular music? Do you want particular plant spirits present? Do you want particular it goes on and on and on and on. Because in that way, that may not make sense to our thinking mind. The ceremony that we offer our animal friend when they're transitioning or when they have transitioned, they are expressions of source consciousness. So they are likely to share things that, of course, may apply for when they're in physical form with us as that animal, but also they're going to possibly and potentially bring in things when they were like an Egyptian god, or when they were a dragon, or when they were an elephant, or whatever the heck it may be. So they can ask for these things because they don't have this separation. So they don't have this separation of the thinking man that goes, oh no, but you're a dog, so you should only be asking for, like, oh, I don't know, a ball and maybe your collar, or maybe a toy that you really like. Again, that is stuff that we may expect because of the thinking mind, but they're in this space of conscious of like, well, I'm everything, I'm being honored, so I want to be honored in these ways. And the power of the ceremony is also in the time. So as humans, we really love the concept of things being quick. And this is what we see in media, right? Of like, got a headache, take a pill, gone. Fast action now. It works immediately. It works within 20 minutes. Ceremony is a beautiful space where time and space doesn't exist, but we are in it for time. Because what happens is it takes a while to get the thinking mind to stop. So to begin with, often the thinking mind can be like, oh, I know, but I've got those emails to look at, or like, we're starting, like, am I going to get hungry? Maybe I should have eaten first. Like, oh, what happens if I'm going to need the toilet? I want to read this newspaper. The thinking mind will try and pull us out of ceremony, because the thinking mind has a bit of a knowing of like, uh-oh, if you enter this space, then something is going to change. There is going to be a softening of the pain that you feel. There is going to be a releasing of the cage we keep ourselves in by living in the thinking mind. Because we access this space of ceremony where we're like, wow, whilst we're in it, it was different. And we can't be in ceremony all the time. It is going to lead to, like, if we drive, it is going to lead to something like we're going to smash the car. If a police officer then comes like, why did you crash the car? We can't be like, because my family of dragons was behind me, and my Zulu ancestor from like 5,000 years ago was giving me some words to speak, and like I'm probably going to get sectioned. But if we're in ceremony, or if we're psychic all the time, that's what's going to happen. So that's why we create these spaces, and then we go back to our everyday human, but in a different way. We're starting to notice, oh, what is this grief? what is behind the grief and what is behind the griefs, behind the griefs, behind the griefs. So we start to have a conversation with the conscious of grief, which is exactly what I do when anything comes for me and I'm like, oh, what is this? Like, what are you? I come into this room, I light my candle, and the consciousness, and it might even be, oh, my knees, I've for 3 days now, my knees really swollen. Like, what's going on there? Whatever it may be, because everything has consciousness. I see it in front of me, like in terms of I imagine it's there, I sense it's there, I just know it's there. And I'm like, I am so sorry. I am so sorry that you've been trying to get my attention and I just haven't been there. But I'm here now. What do you have for me? What do you want me to know? And this in itself is a conversation. It's like all of us going round to a friend's house. We're not there 24/7 for the rest of our lives. We're like, oh, I need to go back home. I need to have got an early start, or I need to get whatever it may be. We have a conversation and we go, great, thank you so much. This conversation needs to end here for now, but I'll come back. I'll come back to you. And so we start to have this dialogue because the griefs or the grief that we feel from our animal friend's transition is an invitation for us to be with those pains, is an invitation to be with those griefs that chances are not going to go here like on the card machine where the cards go on playing cards, not like that, because again the oversoul note, like if we got those, we're probably going to be again in a psychiatric ward because we're like, don't give me all at the same time, like come on. So it's slow, and there's a traffic jam of them. So the ones that were like, oh, okay, let me be with you, and who are you? Let me be with you, and who are you? And so often what I find when our animal friend transitions, behind the grief or behind the griefs, one of them so potently and powerfully is guilt. Now, this comes in other forms, but so much so with our animal friends because we question, right? We doubt. And that, again, is another thing, useful information to pay attention to. We question, we doubt. If we made the decision to have our animal friend euthanized, which I will say, the thinking mind might not be able to comprehend this, which I will say, if we have made the decision for our animal friend to be euthanized, in terms of the oversoul, they're privy to it as well. So it's not all on us. And that is something that I'm not saying that the animal friends have shared with me. The thinking mind might not be able to comprehend that because it's like, what? My animal friend didn't put their paw and be like, oh no, let's go now. Now, in that way, sometimes they can if we're able to communicate with them in that way. But in that sense, they are also privy to that information of this being through the oversoul a conversation that we've had together. But if our animal friend has been euthanized, this is where we really question, we really doubt, right? Of did I do it too soon? Oh, did I leave it too late? Like, were they in a lot of pain? Do you know, like, someone's shown me a foster dog. Someone's told me about a foster dog, and I think I'm going to take that dog. But my dog just recently transitioned. Can I? Are they angry with me? Are they mad at me? Anyway, did they hate me? Are they okay? All this guilt. And again, we placed that guilt on, well, I'm feeling guilty because my animal friend transitioned and they transitioned in this way. But the guilt was always there before their transition. Again, through their transition, this is what they are opening up for us to be with as our soul work. That's another pain. That pain was always there before that transition came. So we attach it because that's what the thinking mind likes to do. I just need to have this linear, limited way of existing because it makes sense to the thinking mind. So I feel guilt, of course I feel guilt because like I had my animal friend put to sleep, bad me. But what it brings forward as medicine is no, all the times you were made to feel guilty, starting with the first time you were made to feel guilty, when in reality it wasn't even your fault. So the blames, the shames, the judgments, you're too loud, like, oh goodness, like you're too emotional, you're too quiet, speak up, why didn't you? All these things where we're made to feel guilty, that our animal friends go, oh, sweetheart, oh, you never did anything wrong. And this is the only way we can bring this message to you. When we are ready to receive that message by the heart being blown open. Another thing that can come through the transition for us, and there's many, 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 is this overwhelming shock, doubt, and questioning of, am I ever going to be loved like that again? Because our animal friends, as expressions of consciousness, are pure divine love, as are we, by the way, but they haven't left sacred ground. So they just, I'm love. I love me. I don't care whether I'm 14 and I'm getting a crusty nose and my teeth are missing. I still love me. And they love us without limits. And so when they transition, we can feel like this, like, oh, my heart is sorrowful, is broken, is panicked, because I got that love from my animal friend. Am I ever going to get that again? And the question is yes, because other animal friends will come into our life. The question is yes, because what they share is like, sweetheart, yes, because love yourself unconditionally. Love yourself the way that we love you unconditionally. And I'm saying that as words, and that's easy. That's easy for me to say. The challenge and the walk and the patience and the refining and the refining and the refining and the refining is being in the space of what we may call the healing journey. I like to call it doctoring because that's the way that I see myself do it. That's how I see the animals do it. And also because, again, as a word, words have consciousness. Healing can be quite a charged word. Of like, I mean, it's used a lot, right, in the industry. So like, oh, here we go again with the healing journey. Healing is not about changing anything. Healing is not about necessarily even being better, getting better. It's about coexisting and having the recognition of, oh, I'm feeling a charge right now that my thinking mind is trying to place on something that it can understand by what it's seeing and computing, but there is something behind that. There is something behind that. There is something behind that. And then it starts to become a little bit softer. Or the ability for us to feel safer starts to be a little bit longer. Or the panic, the anxiety, the doubt, the judgments that we put on ourselves start to not last as long. Where we go, oh, there we go again, there's a thinking mind. That's something that has happened, but it's not happening now. Something that has happened, but it's not happening now. And that's why it's a journey that takes patience, that is an adventure, that is an exploration itself, depending on the pains that we've experienced in our life. Because some of us may have had, as I said, two. Some of us may have had 202 or 2002. So we are in it, but we don't give ourselves a hard time about it. We are in it, and that's why I call it doctoring, because, you know, sometimes we go to the doctor and they're like that. It's the end of the road, I'm afraid. We can support you, we can make you comfortable. I can't fix that. I can't make it go away. I can't change, but we can still doctor, we can still do, we can still be. And so when we're in this space of allowing ourselves to have this unconditional love for ourselves, just placing it. I always say, you know, the first victory is a recognition. That's the first victory. You don't have to do anything about it. It's just the first victory of like, there's a charge. And these charges come. They're like, how it was shared with me is, it's like the ripple effects of an earthquake. We get an earthquake, and then after the earthquake, it ripples, 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 ripples. What the rippling out is, we kind of attach to say, oh, that's the pain. But what is being brought forward is the pains that were there even before the transition. And so another thing that I explore, that I realize when our animal friends transition, is where in our life, which again is not right or wrong, it's true, usually as a result of the pain that we experience in our life, is where we trying to control things. Because when we're in this space of, I trust who I am, I know who I am, I believe in who I am, I don't care what anybody else thinks about me, then, wow, the things that unravel, God, I wasn't expecting that, but okay, that's fine. Let's have curiosity and see what happens. This is the way I wanted things to go, but oh, right, okay, I was supposed to be catching a flight at this time, that flight's being cancelled, I'm now going to be taking bypass over here and have a night in this, so wow, how can I make that into an adventure? So where are we trying to control things? and control our life. And again, it's useful information. It's not right or wrong, it's not shame or blame. It probably does come from shame or blame of, oh, I have so many things have happened in my life that I need prediction. I need safety. I need to know what's going to come around the corner. I need to know when that lion is going to be chasing me. So I need to control everything. And this in itself is the invitation of our soul work through and from our animal friends transition. Because they are expressions of source consciousness living from infinite soul span that goes, we're going to fall into this space. This is going to happen in this moment for an activation for you. What we ask as sacred beings is to be honored through ceremony. And then what our grief needs is also a ceremony. Grief does not live in the landscape of the thinking mind. That's just why we can't think our way out of grief. Grief lives in the landscape of sacred, of unseen. The land of sacred and unseen, of soul that we are, lives also in the landscape of ceremony. The ceremony will take as long as it takes. And when we start to be in these spaces, I've been doing this for 15 years myself. I still go into ceremonies. I can still be in a situation. I tell you something, being self-employed, if anybody is listening that's self-employed, when you're self-employed, you cannot not do your own work. It makes you look at your own work completely. You can't avoid it. Because there's things that show up that you're like, oh, it's that client, or it's that customer, or it's that order. It's like, it's not. It's soul work in that way. So I'm still doing this work where I'm like, yeah, this is now bothering me. This is becoming a bit of a pattern where this belief system is telling me whatever it may be telling me. That's not true. That comes from elsewhere. I can't be with it right now in this seen landscape of physical where there's time, where there's attention, where there's needs, where there's cooking, where there's cleaning, where there's showing up being a professional. So let me look at my diary and go, right, there, I'm going to give myself 3 days. It might be I need 5 days. It might be I need 2 days. I'm going to give myself 3 days because this again is a continuation. That we are ceremonial beings by nature. We know ceremony and we are to be in ceremony. Not once, not twice, not for 5 minutes, but keep going back to the ceremonial landscapes, the ceremonial grounds. There is a beautiful saying by a medicine man from Guatemala called Miguel Rivera. And I love it so much because it's so true. That he shares that in his culture, in his society, they sing and dance and drum and rattle for 10 hours. They talk about it for 5 minutes. In our society, we sing and drum and dance and rattle, maybe, for 5 minutes. And then we just don't stop talking about it. Never mind for 10 hours. We just talk about it. But we talk about it in a way that feeds the thinking mind. So we feed it. We feed it so it grows rather than feeding it in a way that it becomes soft, that we can nurture it, that we can speak to it, that we can go like a fish going back in the waters. Oh, thank you so much. You're so beautiful. I see you and let me put you back into the waters. So we sing, we drum, we dance, we rattle for 10 hours. What is needed is done in the ceremony, in that moment. It might be, something's changed. When these transitions are really intense, the ceremony is going to be intense. They're messy. There's nothing comfortable about a ceremony. It's not necessarily supposed to be pleasant. I mean, there's moments of it where it are pleasant, but in those moments of singing and dancing and drumming, there is crying, there is pain, emotional pain, physical pain. There may be like, oh my goodness, I don't think I can go anymore. Yes, you can. There may be, I need to sleep, I need to rest, I need some sustenance. Then I'm going to go back to the ceremony. There might be complete fasting. How that looks is how that looks is how that looks. There's different ceremonies that we can do. But the point is we go into the ceremony and what is needed in that moment that we trust. The thinking mind might be like, oh, I wanted it to all go away. It's not necessarily all going to go away. There's things that I've done in ceremony. So I'll give you an example, a very physical example. So one of our dogs, Lilu, one of our dogs, expressions of consciousness, Lilu. So a couple of summers ago, she got hit by a car, came onto, mounted the curb, ran her over, hit the brakes because they obviously realised they ran Lilu over. She got trapped under the wheel, screaming, the blood-curdling scream, awful, awful scream. The driver then drove off. So I'm like, okay, in shock, right? And Anyway, that was all dealt with. The one thing that I couldn't get out of my body, the one thing I could not get out of my body was her screams. I tried different ceremonies. I needed a soul retrieval. She needed a soul retrieval. I did a soul retrieval. Different ceremonies. And I sat with it and I'm like, what? What do you need? And even before I got my answers, like the fire, of course, the fire. So one of the ceremonies that I do is a longer ceremony with fire where we do fire walking. And I was like, I need to walk the fire. So I went to the land, set it up myself, went into ceremony on my own, lay out the coals, and even before like my foot, even before my foot actually hit the coals, just like literally like wind, I just felt it leave my body. Now, the thinking mind might be like, oh, that's what I need. I'm not saying all of us as a ceremony need something like, I mean, fire as a ceremony is really powerful, but that's an example. So it might not be in your situation or any situation the fire ceremony is needed. Very, very, very powerful ceremony. But there's lots of different ceremonies that we can do. And what I also wanted to share is that we can go way, way, way back in an animal's transition for information of what they were holding for us and wanting us to see. So it's taken me a long time. I mean, talk about consciousness. Like, oh God, finally, I just got it. Take me a long time to realize that death, conscious of death, is kind of like, it's been like Pac-Man. It's been chasing me all of my life, not in a haunting way, but a like knocking at my door. Like, will you hear me now? Will you let me in now? Like, hello, will you give attention to this now? And that started when I was 8 years old. So when I was 8 years old, it's a bit sad. I didn't really have many friends. My best friend was my rabbit, Snowy, beautiful New Zealand white rabbit called Snowy. I would get him from school. I'd get Snowy out of his hutch. We lived at the back of a nature reserve. So I'd take him down the nature reserve and we'd just walk. Not so much in the winter time, but springtime. So I was out until, the lights come on in the streets, as in my era of growing up, come home when the lights come on. So I was out for hours with Snowy, my absolute best friend. And there was a particular day, thank goodness, Spirit, I was off school with a cold, and I went to get Snowy, and I knew he just wasn't well. He was not well. And I brought him in the house, and I held him, I hugged him, I held him, I hugged him, I held him, I hugged him and held him, and speaking to him. And he gave out the most almighty, it sounded like a human, he gave out the most almighty human scream, died in my arms. Like my absolute best friend in that moment, gone. That's a trauma. I'm 43 now. Back then I was 8. We're not most of us aren't trauma informed now, right? Way, way back then there was nothing about trauma. One like, oh, she's a kid, she'll not even remember. I was traumatized. My parents love me dearly, and in the kindest of their heart, because they're kind people. A few days later, I came home. I'd been to see a friend. I came home, and my dad was cleaning out Snowy's hutch, and I was like, Dad, what are you doing? And he was like, oh, well, your mum's friend at work. Well, her little girl's now got a rabbit, so wouldn't it be really nice to give her all of Snowy's things? That's a really nice, because we don't have Snow anymore, so that's a really nice thing to do, isn't it? I'm like that. No, that ain't happening. They're Snowy's. I'm not ready for anything to happen to Snowy's things. I'm not ready for that. My parents do love me very much, but unfortunately, what happened is Snowy's things, when I was then invited to journey to this person's place to hand over Snowy's belongings, talk about additional trauma, that was really, really traumatic, and that haunted me for years, to the point of like, I can never have another animal in my life, because they'll live until they're a year old. Snowy died when he was a year old. They'll live until a year old, then they'll leave me. I cannot deal with that ever again. But then I started to have a different relationship around death. A very scary one, actually. Again, when I was a child, I witnessed a boy get knocked over by a bus, and he died like literally right in front of me. That was pretty traumatic. I remember I stopped speaking for a while. I had to go to hospital, and it was just, again, the trauma of witnessing then a dead body when I was a kid in front of me. Then this trail goes on of when my grandfather was dying. I knew he was dying, and there was kind of like between us. So he was at home. He wanted to die at home. At this point, he was unconscious, and I knew he was going to die that night. I mean, I didn't know, but I was like, there was this feeling like, I feel he's going to die tonight. I just want to stay with him. So I was supposed to stay at my uncle's house, but I wanted to stay with my granddad. And I just said to my family, look, I'm going to stay with my granddad in his room. I'm just going to read to him. Don't know what I'm going to read. I'm just going to read to him. And he sat up. He was being unconscious. He sat up, And he was like, that's it, not long to go now. And I'm like, what do you mean, Grandad? What do you mean there's not long to go? I've seen my grandma and granddad, they're waiting for me, not long to go. Boof, back, flat out, unconscious in the bed. And he died that evening. And I was like, but what? I want to know more. Like, you didn't say you saw your mum and dad, you saw your grandma and granddad waiting for you. So, like, not your parents, but your grandparents. And who else? What else was there? Who else was there? And that is the beauty of what I now know and what I now see, is the concentric circles of the unseen and the support that we have from the unseen realms. Not just when our transition comes, but now. There's circles upon circles upon circles of support that go as far as the eye can see, including our animal friend and including their transition, all that are waiting for them, all that they have been, all of their ancestors, all of their families, everything in spirit is there. And this is the beauty of when we are in this space of support, that we may want, need, expect, like, wish to have support from a human. Now, there is this saying of grief is solitary work that we cannot do alone. We are ceremonial beings by nature. We know how to do ceremony. Many, 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 many moons ago, we also knew how to do grief. And one of those ways to do grief is we do it in community. It's solitary work that we're not supposed to do alone, because we do it in ceremony, we do it in song, we do it in voice, we do it in drum, we do it in rattle, we do it in crying. One of us is grieving while one of us is hauling. Then, oh, okay, they're on the ground now, and we do it in this circle. And that's what grief asks us to come back to as well. But what we do have is the support of the unseen, where we may feel, I'd really like some more support from humans, or how many of us want to have the approval of a human that we know we're never going to get the approval from that human. But yet, we have a collective family. The trees are our family. They already support us and love us and approve us. The mushrooms are our family. They already support us, approve us, and love us. The seahorses are our family. They already love us, support us, and approve us. Everything that lives as source consciousness that hasn't left sacred ground already goes, yeah, I know you, I see you. You're perfect as you are. So I wanted to just drop that in before I forgot, because it came in. So, went with my grandfather. I then had a near-death experience. I went 5 days with a burst appendix. Very, very, very close to death. And in my near-death experience, it was really beautiful and simple and pleasant. It wasn't like, maybe you see in the movies, or there's some amazing people that I've read their books where they've had a near-death experience. It's like, you must come down to earth and this is what you must. Didn't get anything like that. It was just this beautiful golden light. And I was in this golden light going, would you look at this? This is death. It feels really warm. I don't hold, like, nothing. I, in that moment, had no thoughts. No, poor Isla. Why do people hate me? Am I good at... No, just this, wow, I am in this tunnel of light, and I am this light. I am this light. I am this divine. It was the most amazing experience. And then when I came back to Earth, that's when things started to change. Because then I started to hear, not all of consciousness, I can't hear from everything. But for me, the way that conscious speaks to me is through the animals, through the plant, through nature, really. And that is when a tree shared with me, you are enough. And so in my kind of final journey with transition for me, I was close to suicide. I was like, I'm done. I am so done with this life. I want to go back to that golden tunnel. That was beautiful. That was amazing. And then a tree spoke to me that I knew very, very well. I was like, you are enough. And I'm like, oh, okay, there's something else for me to explore. And so that was kind of like my journey into the navigation of transition for when our animal friends transition, which led me to where I'm at now through Tunkasila. So for those of you that don't know, my absolute dear divine darling, all of my animal friends are dear divine darlings. Tunkasila, that saved me from suicide, that got me out of an abusive marriage, that taught me so much about trauma, that taught me so much. When her transition came, I was like, I'm going to be a mess. Like, I'm going to be fine. I really appreciate I have a very different relationship to grief and transition than many people. So I said to my family and friends, I'm going to be fine. but I'm not sure what I'm going to need. I don't know if I'm just going to need to cry for days and days and days. I don't know if I need to maybe just go off into nature somewhere. Like, I'm going to be fine, just don't worry about me, but I might just be on radio silence. And before Tunkasila transitioned, she shared a lot with me about them being sacred animals, about them needing to be honoured, about the importance of ceremony for them and ourselves. And so we sat together and she shared her ceremony with me. It's this, it's this, it's this, it's this. I'm someone that really likes their sleep. We did a night vigil. So when she transitioned, I sat up all night in ceremony in a night vigil, and I was with the unseen. I was in this room actually, but I was not in this room. Like, I was in a very, very different space. So the power of ceremony meant that when so I did it for 2.5 days, that when I came out the other side, don't get me wrong, I was still like, oh god, like, oh, I really miss her physical presence. I was sad, but the ceremony had supported the intensity of the grief. That is the power of the ceremony, that it looks at the intensity of what we are carrying and it does something quite magical with it. Not just once, not just twice, it's often that we need to go back, but for a different pain. Or, okay, that thing's still there, but it's a little bit softer, but I want to go back and be with its consciousness. I want to be in the consciousness with it. And she shared some really beautiful things with me about her transition, about when our animal friends transition in the way that they do. It's what is needed for us, that the thinking mind can't comprehend, but what is needed for us for our soul work. So that might be our animal friend transitions really quickly and unexpectedly, which is a trauma. So then we're in that space of, we have to look at the trauma, we have to look at the grief. We can't just look at the grief, we can't just look at the trauma. We have to look at both. Or it can be a slow transition in a space of what we can prepare ourselves for. So I remember Tunkasila, like, she would, when she was alive, she'd always be in this room. When I was in this room, she would always be in this room. And then what started to happen is that she basically started to go in different rooms in the house. And I was like, I'm really curious about this. Like, can you share with me what is happening here? And she said, yeah, I'm preparing you. And I was like, oh, like, what are you preparing me for? She was like, for when I'm no longer around. I'm getting your physical body used to my physical body not being present. So she knew in her wisdom and intelligence what I was ready for, what I needed. I have animal friends that have transitioned quickly, like Snowy, and then in this way with Tunkasila, of I'm preparing you. And the way that I want to describe the ceremony, the only way it's really hard to try and describe something that has to be felt and you've got to be in it. But the only way I can describe the ceremony how it was for me is that I was preparing, like, I was preparing to lose it. I was preparing to be a mess. And it never came. I was like, it's going to come. It's going to come. It never came. And the only way I can describe how that may, well, not feel like, how, the only way I can describe it is when we get the hiccups. Our body gets used to kind of this motion, right? And then the hiccups stop. But for a while, our body's kind of still waiting for the hiccup to come, but it doesn't come again because the hiccups have stopped. That's the only way I can describe it. Of, like, the thinking mind's still like, it's going to come, it's going to go, surprise! The power of the ceremony. And that's what I find in our animal friends transition. What it calls for, not just for them, is a ceremony, but what our grief requires, because our grief lives in this territory of sacred where ceremony is. Our grief knows this landscape and our grief knows ceremony. And so do we, because like I said, we are ceremonial beings by nature. And so this is what our animal friends call us to when they are very much in their physical form with us. It's just that we are so good at defaulting and learning and conditioning to something outside of me. It's you. It's you. Whether it's our animal friend, whether it's a work colleague, whether it's a family member, whether it's someone on the street, it's you. But the reality is, it's what's within. That, as I say, so many of us have been put in oppressive systems. We were brought up in oppressive systems, regardless of whether it was really, really awful, harsh, abusive oppressive systems, or whether it was just control, whether it was control. Oppression, still oppression that way. It's still a wound, it's still a pain, it's still, I am not being heard in some way, I am not being seen in some way, I'm not being accepted in some way. I'm being approved under someone else's rules of what is good or what is bad or what is right or what is wrong. And so we can start to be with these pains when we start to realize, like, oh, I'm projecting onto my animal friend. I am controlling my animal friend. I am putting my oppressive systems or the oppressive systems placed onto me onto my animal friend. Which, I mean, sometimes it's hilarious. I don't do it so much now, but sometimes with animal friends in the past, I would say things. I'm like, oh my god, all right, that's my granny coming out of, like, how dare you do that? You ruined a perfectly good day. I'm like, oh my god, have you heard yourself, Isla? And we repeat these things, but we are able to catch them and then be with them. It's useful information. But then through their transition, this is why I see, transition, their transition is sacred because they're sacred beings. Our grief is sacred because it's sacred medicine for us. There's this beautiful saying that I teach, and that many people teach, of it's not happening to us. That's the thinking mind. It's happening for us. But what the thinking mind can't comprehend is, I don't want my animal friend to try. None of us want our animal friend to transition. None of us do. But the reality is that as a physical being, that is a continuation of lives. We have been many things and maybe many things again. Now, this is what's going to happen. And this is the concern that I have. Oh, concern, curiosity, awareness that I have around longevity. Longevity, I mean, I love, and I support, and I talk about it, of how do we keep our animal friends alive for longer? How do we understand about their telomeres shortening faster than ours? How do we understand giving them a good diet? How do we understand chemical load? How do we understand the importance of exercise, the importance of skin care, the importance of all these things? But there is so much focus, not only just on longevity, but in a way that's kind of becoming, for me, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but it's creating an essence of panic, desperation, fear. I've got to keep my dog alive longer. I've got to keep my cat alive longer, alive longer. That's actually got nothing to do with us. Even if we do our damn hardest in every, I fasted my animal friend. There was no chemicals. There was no vaccines. There was raw, natural environment. Everything. The age that they live to is the age that they live to for what is needed for what we are to experience, for what they bring, and for what we are ready for. And so then it comes to this situation as example of our, not Manitou and Lilu, because I mean they're 4 very, very soon, but our older dogs. 3 of our dogs transitioned in close succession to each other. Now, I was at a point where I'm like, we're another transition, another ceremony. It's beautiful. It's sacred. Oh, it's in the ceremony. I'm with it. I'm now connected to the conscious of my animal friend in a different way. 3 animals? Whew, I hadn't experienced that before. I'm like, so now I'm ready to experience, because if someone comes to me and goes, I've lost 3 animals, I've lost 5 animals, and I'm like, oh, I can't relate to that. I'm like, yeah, I'm not saying my grief is the same. It can't be. Everyone's grief is unique and different. Grief can't be the same. But I can go, yeah, on some level, in some way, I know what that's like. So it's still the evolution of what we are ready for, what happened, what we're ready for now, through this continuous cycle of our animal friends being consciousness, whether they're in a physical form or whether they're out of a physical form, and that they haven't left these landscapes of the seen and the unseen. I actually just want to check my notes to see if there's anything that I want to bring in that I've missed. Yeah, and so the only other thing that I want to share, I'm not going into this because there's not space, there's not time, and I don't want to bring in words that are charged and triggering, but this is where, through our animal friends transition, because not all grief has trauma, but all trauma has grief. That where we can have these transitions with our animal friend that bring forward grief but in traumatic ways, that's where we are to look almost before the grief or as well as the grief with the trauma. So as I say, if an animal friend transitions, like they died in their sleep, they transitioned in their sleep, and they were 20, that's still a grief, but we like, it's good innings. That's, it's almost like if our 100-year-old grandfather transitioned, we're like, that's good innings. But my really healthy, happy 5-year-old Labrador and, chased after a ball, get hit by a car, that it brings forward the trauma, and it's traumatic grief in that moment, or can be, but it also brings forward, just as I say, all the griefs and all the trauma. And that is a slower, um, softer landscape, excuse me, that we walk in, where the ceremony might be a little bit more. Uh, we need to feel in what we're ready for. So sometimes the intensity can be like, okay, that's too intense. We do breaths before we go into holding a breath, for example. Like I'm not saying it's breath work, although breath work can be part of it, but in terms of let's just do a softer ceremony before we go into the intensity. And that depends on an individual. Like some individuals are going to come to me and go, no, we're gonna dive straight in. Um, and also that's just what we trust of what that person is ready for. So that's also kind of before I stop here and we go into questions. That's also what I want to share of, if this is aligning with you, if you're like, oh, what is ceremony? How do I do ceremony? I just wanted to share the different ways that we can connect, that we can continue. So I offer one-to-ones that are called sacred transition ceremonies, when an animal friend is soon to transition, and I sit with them and I'm like, okay, what would you like for your ceremony? And that includes channeling, it includes their sacred symbol. Um, it also includes, I mean, depending on distance, of course, includes that I can go to the person's home and we continue the ceremony. If the vet's coming to the house to euthanize, I get there hours before the vet comes. The vet will eventually arrive. Just I take a step back, they do their thing, and then we continue the ceremony. But I don't need to be there. Most of my work is remote. I also do sacred spirit ceremonies for when our animal friend has already transitioned. I also do sacred soul work with our grief. So they're one-to-ones again that I do remotely. If we're in this space like, wow, I'm really grieving my animal friend's transition, or I'm realizing the grief it's bringing forward, I also do sacred grief soul work at a one-to-one. I also am holding sacred grief ceremonies, which I would love to be in person. For now, they're actually going to be online. Um, the whole point of community ceremony, there's a thing about ceremony being in person. A group of people in a room that just creates something. But when the intention is strong and we give it power regardless, ceremonies online are really, really powerful. Um, for something much deeper, if like going really deep into soul work, I offer a 21 lesson container called Sacred Creator that really looks at our soul work. And I also do a 9-session offering that's called Creating Sacred Transition for Your Animal Friend and Being with Your Grief. There are two things I'm going to share as a link. So every second Tuesday of the month, that's at 5 o'clock UK time. So it's 12 p.m. Eastern time. Can't remember what it is Pacific time. But every second Tuesday of the month, I hold with my colleague and friend Dr. Linda Luden, who's a specialist euthanasia vet. We hold sacred grief circles, and I can share a link in the chat if you would like to join that. The next one is going to be the 10th of March. So let me just put that in the chat for you. And also, because not everyone can be available every second Tuesday of the month, I also hold something called the Village. So the Village is basically a sacred grief circle where we join, where we may just talk. We may go, okay, who's in a really deep place of grief right now? Who wants to be the witnesser? It may be a ritual comes in. It may be a very short, simple ceremony. It may be, oh, I've received this song. I want to share this song. I never know what it is until we're going to be in it. So the Village is something that is available on Telegram. I'm going to share the link in a moment. And just because life is busy for us, right? There's so many things that would be, join this membership, come into this community, learn about this, come in this free talk, that I wanted to keep it really contained, but also really simple. So it simply is a Telegram group. Only I can post. And it basically is going to be, guys, we're going to meet on this date at this time. It's not going to be the night before. I obviously want people to have space to be able to join. But it's very ad hoc. There's no like, we meet every third. People have busy lives. I have busy lives. So it's like, how can I create something as a holding that, of course, if people are part of the Village, they can reach out to me individually. But that is a Telegram group, honestly. I just want to say it's a Tinder group. Like, it's not a Tinder group. It's a Telegram group. But but here's the link for that as well. And if you would like to join that, as I say, the village is there, and I see the village expanding into like, okay, now we're going to do an in-person ceremony, or we're going to do an online 3-day ceremony, these longer sacred grief ceremonies that for me is ceremonial beings. When we are in these deep pains, that's what we're being called to, and for me that's not what's being talked about. That's what's We're not being invited to these spaces. That is what these painful times, these intense times of grief, of trauma, of pains, of guilt, all these second layers, as Michael Meade calls them, we go into ceremony with them. We don't think about them, we don't talk about them. We are in the sacred space, the sacred landscape, so that we can be with them, we can dance with them, that they become a different shape. It doesn't mean to say they're necessarily going to go, they become a different shape. So I am going to stop talking for now. I'm going to stop the recording so that we can go into questions, because this is going to be shared in different platforms. So I appreciate there's names, there's faces, and people may want to just keep it private. So let me just stop the recording. I'm going to pause the recording. So thank you all so much for being, listening, allowing me to have your hearts and your ears in this continuation. It's just the start, dropping some seeds, planting some seeds, growing some corn, like I've just shared, of seeing our animal friends in a different space, in a different way, how to be with their transition, understand their transition, that it's an activation of our soul work by going into our grief work. So thank you all so much for being with me. Your questions are really beautiful, and just because I did light the candle just to hold our animal friends that are with us in physical and invisible, seen and unseen. Yeah, we just give thanks for ourselves, for wanting to be here to receive. We give thanks to our animal friends as expression of consciousness wanting this for us, able to see them in new ways, and in ways that are also not new because we've always known this and know this. And we send love to ourselves, we send love to our animal friends, we send love to all, to all, to all. And wishing you all many blessings. Have a beautiful evening. Anything that you require clarity on, or anything that I've shared through the links, please just drop me a message or find me through website or Facebook. Lovely to be with you all. Thank you so much. Many blessings. I look forward to the next
Thank
one.
you.
You're so
Bye,
welcome.
everyone.
Bye. Bye.